Thank you for joining us for this morning's program on the State of the Valley. I'm Claire Noble, the Program Manager for the Vail Symposium. On behalf of Chris Sable, our Executive Director, Dale Mosier, our Board Chairman, and the entire Vail Symposium Board, welcome. This program is presented in collaboration with the Vail Valley Partnership. 2 items before we get started. Please use the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen to submit questions for this morning's panelists. You can type those in there at any time, and we'll do our best to get to as many as time permits. And it'd be great as if you could keep them as concise as possible. This program will run until 10:15. It's being recorded, and this video will be available at vailsymposium.org as well as from the VVP. I'd like to thank just a few organizations and individuals who've helped make today's program possible. Our sponsors are the Town of Vail, Vail Resorts Epic Promise, the Antlers at Vail, and the Vail Daily. Our virtual programs are sponsored by Alpine Bank. The summer season was underwritten by Cindy Ingalls and Leela and Walt Misher. The Vail Symposium is supported by a generous grant from the Frechette Family Foundation. And funding has also been provided to the Vail Symposium by Colorado Humanities and the National Endowment for the Humanities as part of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, Economic Stabilization Plan of 2020. If you're a Vail Symposium donor, thank you so much. If you're not but would like to be, please visit vailsymposium.org. And I just want to put in a plug for our final program of our summer season. It's our 25th program, and it will be on Wednesday, November 11th at 6 p.m. We welcome Hudson Institute Senior Fellow Melanie Kirkpatrick for a history of Thanksgiving, the holiday at the heart of the American experience. November 11th is well known as Veterans Day, but it also marks the 400th anniversary of the arrival of the Mayflower at Plymouth. This morning, we are honored to host a panel along with the VVP that brings together leaders of organizations that impact virtually every citizen in our community. These individuals have long and impressive resumes, but I hope you'll forgive me for just providing an abbreviated bio this morning in the interest of time. Jeff Schroll is the Eagle County manager. He's been with the county for the past 2.5 years. But prior to working with Eagle County, Schroll was the town of Gypsum manager for 24.5 years. In his time with Eagle County, he has been part of assembling a new leadership team that's had to tackle 3 emergency declarations in that short period of time. Phil Qualman is in his 2nd year as superintendent of Eagle County Schools. Before working in this capacity, he served as the assistant superintendent for 3.5 years and as principal of Battle Mountain High School for 6 years. Before taking the helm as principal, he was an assistant principal and a social studies teacher. Beth Howard began her career with Vail Resorts in 1985 as a college intern at Beaver Creek, kicking off a 35-year career with the company. Howard has been on the operational side of the ski industry her entire career, working her way through the ranks of food and beverage and eventually becoming vice president of food and beverage and clubs. In 2014, Beth took the helm as North Star California's general manager. In 2016, she became the chief operating officer at Beaver Creek, and in 2019 was promoted to her current role as the chief operating officer of Vail Mountain. Will Cook is the president and chief executive officer of Vail Health. Previously, Cook served as the president and chief executive officer of University of Colorado Hospital, the only academic medical center in Colorado. Formerly, Cook worked at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. Cook's early career was spent with Johns Hopkins Health System, where he held several positions, including Director of Operations at Johns Hopkins International Medical Center in Singapore. And our moderator today is Chris Romer, the President and CEO of the Vail Valley Partnership. Just one last reminder, please use the Q&A option to ask your questions. Again, I'll monitor that and share those with our panelists throughout the program. Chris, I'm going to hand things over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Claire. And thank you for everyone for tuning in today to hear from this panel. And the introductions and brief bio overview that Claire provided shows the wealth of experience that we have on this panel today. And I'm pretty sure I just called Jeff Schroll old when I said wealth of experience, but really just a great panel of community leaders. We're really happy that you guys are all able to take the time to spend with us today. We're going to jump right in. We have a few questions that I'm going to start with, and then we're going to dedicate quite a bit of time to the audience Q&A. So the first question, and I'm just going to go around my screen. So we're going to start with Phil. And the question is, give us a brief overview of the state of the Valley from the perspective of your organization.
You bet. Chris, can you hear me okay? Yep, excellent. Well, thank you for hosting. And Vail Symposium, thanks for bringing us together and for the invitation to join the panel. I'm honored to be here. I'm proud to say that Eagles County Schools have been open since August 25th, and we're proud to be one of the few districts in the state with in-person instruction available to all of our students. Our goal this year is to keep schools open and keep kids in school as long as we can, as safely as possible. And thus far, we've been pretty successful in that goal. We've implemented various layers of protection in all our schools that have kept students and staff safe and allowed for our classrooms to remain open. We're extremely grateful to the community for cooperating to keep that key performance indicator low, and for students and staff for following all the safety protocols that we have in our schools. That includes face masks and social distancing and learning in outside environments and hand washing and sanitizing and all those steps that are keeping our schools open. So we're really proud to have them open, and we hope to keep them open as much as we can this school year.
Thanks, Phil, and a huge compliment to the administration and especially the frontline staff at the school district. I know there's immense pressure and stress on those teachers and administrators. We really appreciate the work that Eagle County Schools are doing on behalf of the entire community. Jeff Schroll, you're next on my screen. A brief overview of the state of the county from your perspective, please.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, everybody. It's been an interesting going past the summer of 2020. This all started with COVID back in March, and I've been in the Valley for 27 years, and I think one of the highlights for me looking back through this summer is not just the people on this panel, but also the people, many of the names that I see on the side, of just how much collaboration and cooperation has had to take place between all the jurisdictions, from the county, the school, our business community, including Vail Resorts, the hospital, and all the medical providers in the Valley, as well as all of our municipal friends. And I say all that because with COVID and with the fire activity that we've had this summer, it's just been a whirlwind of activities and a whirlwind of intense, long hours, I would say. But I also think it showed Eagle County's, and not speaking of just organization, but in terms of the whole, the resiliency that our Valley has, and it makes me proud to live here. I'm also, not. We know we're not done with some of these things like COVID. I think it's still here for a bit, and I already see some good chat comments of what are we going to be doing for ski season. I know we'll get to that, but I think everybody that's on this call, I think we've really enjoyed our opportunities to collaborate with everybody to help try to keep businesses open, to help keep the schools open, communicate things with our medical providers so that we can just keep moving forward. And I'll finish with saying one thing. I think when we were back in March and April, we thought our economic outlook this year was going to be dire. And it's down a little bit, but for the most part, a lot of industries, because of that cooperation, because we worked so closely together in trying to get summer stuff open as best as we could, businesses, restaurants, and those kinds of things, and the cooperation of our residents in this county, to what Phil said, just following the social distancing guidelines and all the 5 commitments. That's been a big key component to the success that we've all been able to have in the midst of all these crazy emergencies this summer.
Thanks, Jeff. And the amount and Eagle County's always done pretty well with regards to collaboration and communication. And I think that foundation has served us very, very well over the past 7 or 8 months, and really an example for many around the state and the region, for sure, and how to approach these things together. So thank you for your role in that and your leadership there. Beth Howard, you're next on my screen. If you don't mind sharing a brief overview of the state of the county from your perspective.
Sure. Thanks, Chris, and good morning, everyone. And I appreciate being a part of this forum today. I want to begin with really the 3 areas of focus that has really framed our approach to opening this winter. And this is a lens we've looked through in everything we've developed for our operating plans. And first and foremost is the safety of our guests, employees, and communities. And that's been our overarching guideline and lens that we've looked through in everything we've done. Second, having a successful season start to finish. It's our intent to open and stay open, and everything we've designed around that is to accomplish that goal. And then finally, prioritizing our pass holders in this process. Since many of our community members are pass holders, we hope the prioritization of our pass holders this year does indicate to all of you our continued commitment to our Eagle County community. When we're looking at this season, we're not really planning for a handful of days. We're planning for every day, and that's a 140-day season this year, 20 weeks. Have broken it down to see how we can execute each and every day with excellence. When we developed all of our operational SOPs and systems, our approach has been to have those ready in operational day one, rather than waiting in season and having to react and try to implement these types of procedures, reservation systems, whatever, because it's very difficult to do so once you get in season. It is possible at some point in the season, and as we evaluate the dynamics of all of our operations across the company, we may decide that we no longer need reservation system at certain resorts. However, with so many uncertainties at this point, we believe it's only prudent, to have the system in place now as we go towards opening. Regardless of how many people are skiing and riding this season, we will follow our historical practice of working to open as much terrain and as many lifts as possible to allow for the mountain experience that our guests have come to expect and have the passion around. We are weather depending. We're planning on a very aggressive opening scenario, more aggressive than we've ever done in the past. This is really a result of our investments in snowmaking last summer. Our planned opening date is November 20th for Vail Mountain. That's 30 days from now. Not that I'm counting, but I am. And actually temperatures are looking favorable tonight. And we have had a couple of opportunities to make snow already, if you've seen a little bit of white showing up on the hill. And then this weekend, we've got actual weather coming in and a good multi-day window of snowmaking. So really excited to see that. The teams are ready to roll. And if we can keep these cold temps going and a little help from Mother Nature, we'll be able to hit a really good opening here. Our planned opening is to have Golden Peak, Vail Village, and Lion's Head right out of the gates. So, and then we'll move over to the Cascade Portal. Our goal is to be able to physically distance our guests as much as possible, and by having multiple portals open early and as much terrain as we can early. And as we build throughout the season, as conditions allow, it will help us with all of our physical distancing and flows. So that is our approach and why we're looking at our opening in that way. Really want to talk about the incredible partnership, and a couple of people have mentioned it already, but Vail Resorts is so thankful for the partnership with this community, from county, town governments, nonprofits, small business owners. Everyone takes ownership over a successful partnership, and especially in crisis, pandemics, whatever it may be. And we've all been in this lockstep together. The past 7 months, when you look at it, feels like 7 years. In some ways, it feels like a blink, but it certainly has been a period that's tested all of us. But I tell you, working with everyone and these partnerships has really led us to a point where we're in more of recovery than in a reactive incident command mindset. I think also from our perspective, our county has led the state and in many ways the country due to the leadership and close collaboration. It gives me optimism for this winter season ahead, and more than ever, I think how we lean into this continued collaboration partnership will allow us to have a successful season ahead. when we looked at safety, our key to our success so far, at least in the summer months and as we've been planning, has really been our community's collective commitment to safety. The county has provided us with phenomenal leadership and guidance from day one. They've embraced our commitment to safety and supported us every step of the way. And for that, thank you for that. It allowed us to open this summer. We opened on right before the July 4th holiday. We executed in a kind of a microcosm of what winter might look like, but we were able to implement our safety protocols with face coverings and physical distancing and being able to open a summer product and learn from that. And it's helped inform us on how we can execute winter and how to scale. So having summer was a great opportunity for us on the mountain to get practiced. So I'll just close and say, hey, thanks for everyone's support. It's been, and patience. It's quite a process to go deep in how we're looking at how to operate effectively and safely this year. But I have to say, there's never been a time to have over 5,000 skiable acres in our backyard, and we're here and we can do this, and we'll do it together. So thanks.
And thank you, Beth. And I'm sure we're going to dive into some of the, I'm sure some of the audience questions are going to circle around the reservations process and some things like that. So we'll explore that in a little more detail. So thank you for the overview from your perspective and the leadership from Vail Resorts in terms of helping drive our economy. Last and certainly not least, my friend Will Cook from Vail Health. Will, a brief overview on your perspective from the state of the county.
Well, I would be remiss, and I apologize for the redundancy, but the key to our success these past 7 months and the key to the next 7 months and 7 years and beyond is continued partnership. You've heard every single one of the panelists say this, and it's not just words, it's absolutely true and essential to whatever it is we're dealing with. Prior to COVID, the things that I was working on as I arrived here was how do we become better community partners, and in so doing address the behavioral health crisis. How do we ultimately enhance access to more affordable care, because like housing and daycare, that's a real barrier here in the mountains. Chris, your partnership with the Mountain Healthcare Coalition, all of the businesses, both large and small, who helped us work on reducing rates to offer a product that was comparable to Kaiser when they unfortunately left the market, and some work that's actually happened even as we speak in the middle of COVID is essential, because if there's anything that we've learned through COVID, it's that good health is probably your best defense if you get the disease and not having it have serious consequences. And fortunately, we have a baseline health here in the Valley that's higher than most. I think we're one of the healthiest counties in the state, probably the country for that matter. But it still means we've got to figure out ways that we not just focus on world-class orthopedics and, highly specialized oncology care, but how do we focus on wellness and getting upstream to problems? In fact, the merger with Colorado Mountain Medical and the creation of Eagle Valley Behavioral Health is a good example of just that. It's not an effective place to have someone who has behavioral health issues that are unaddressed end up in our emergency department in a 72-hour hold. It's more effective to add the number of providers here in the Valley, integrate them in the schools, integrate them in primary care, put them in the jails, have a crisis response unit that lets us deal with these situations much more effectively. And oh, by the way, more affordably. And thank goodness we were going down that pathway, because all of these were foundational to us trying to get out in front of these issues so people can be well, and when they get sick, not have it be debilitating and enjoy the lives of living in this community. And I got to tell you, COVID really shined a light on just how important that aspect is, and how we have to think more holistically about not just physical health, but behavioral health and really all the social determinants of care. And we have a 16% uninsured rate. It's one of the worst in the state, in this county. And part of that is because Vail Health has not been affordable. So we're trying to work with not just businesses who are self-insured, but insurance companies on ways that we can fix that problem. And I assure you, it may not be fixed yet, but we are going to fix it, because I do not want to have access to healthcare to be a barrier to people staying well, and when they get sick, not being able to afford it. So that really has been our view. Clearly, COVID, I don't think any of us in our lifetime have experienced what we have over the last 7 months. But I will tell you that Vail Health's primary responsibilities and focus has been on how do we protect people from the virus? How do we also, though, simultaneously work with the community, be it Eagle County Department of Public Health, the CDPHE at the state level, all of our wonderful community partners, including our citizens, to figure out a way that we also safely emerge from the virus. Because if we don't and we stay sheltered in place for extended periods of time, the second order consequences, be it behavioral health issues or economic issues, sometimes are worse than the virus itself. And you can't focus on just one, you've got to focus on both. And so a lot of our activity from the summer has been, how do we emerge from a really brutal March and April and try to get back to some semblance of normal life? And that will also continue to be the focus as we're now dealing with this third wave, that's happening here recently. And so how do we strike that balance between protecting the vulnerable, keeping people from getting sick when they get sick, providing them the care that they need, but also supporting Eagle County Department of Public Health and all the businesses in ways that they can try to have a ski season and try to have tourists come back to this valley in a safe manner? Because if we don't, we're going to see several of our businesses disappear and not likely return. And many of our community members have to leave because of financial reasons. And so that really is our focus. How do we strike that balance? And we're so grateful for the partnership. And I'm so very grateful for our frontline staff and providers who've put their lives on the line, like many of you have. And we will get through this, I assure you. But it'll happen only if we continue to collaborate and work together.
Yeah, thank you all, and thanks, Will, for those comments as well. I'm gonna blend our next two questions for you guys in the interest of time, and I'll start with Phil again, and we'll work our way around. And let's keep these pretty brief so we have plenty of time for the audience Q&A. But Phil, what do you think are some of the successes and opportunities? Like, what have we learned so far, and what are our opportunities or challenges moving forward?
Thanks, Chris. I think our success so far, and I've got to echo what Jeff, Beth, and Will have said, is our collaboration. In order to prepare for school this year, we had to collaborate with our principal team, and normally they would take some time off in the summer, but every single one of them stayed engaged throughout the summer, countless meetings, overcoming unprecedented obstacles to get this year started. But we also had at the table the Eagle County Education Association, which is our teachers union. And I have to credit a respectful and inclusive relationship that we have with our union. Their opinion is valued, and we try to incorporate their priorities into all of our planning. And I think that's been a real key to our success in staying open. If you look at a lot of our neighboring school districts and those around the state, they got contentious and hostile relationships with their teachers, and they're struggling to get their schools open. So we're really grateful for the cooperation of our teachers union and the collaboration. And that extends also to public health. All the planning that we did, we had public health at the table to vet our plans, to make sure that they were appropriately maintaining safety as a priority for all our staff and students. And they gave us feedback and said, this will work and this won't work. So we definitely took their planning into account, and as well as the Department of Education. They were helpful in sending us some guidance as well. But all those groups working together is the reason that we're able to open our schools. So I have to credit the collaboration there. And in terms of opportunities for us, I think that trying to keep schools open is our big goal. But in that process, we're learning a lot about some silver linings that could extend beyond this year. So the way that we've leveraged technology, the way that we've taught kids how to become more independent in their learning, is something that I think will be a benefit that we can extend into the future and an opportunity that we can leverage. I can't say that all of our students are on board with this expectation that there's more required of them in terms of maintaining their own learning when they're either in quarantine or in high school when they're in a hybrid model. But we're working with them to develop those learning habits, communicating with parents about this need to move students from dependent learners to independent learners. And I think it's a skill set that will pay off in the long term. But the need to accept that responsibility right now, it came about very abruptly for our students. So some of them are struggling to accept that. and we'll continue to work with them and provide the support so that they can be successful as well. But I do see that as a key opportunity for us moving forward is to leverage technology and to take some of these new skills that we're learning in this remote or hybrid learning for some of our students into the future.
Thanks, Phil. Great examples all. Change is hard, and how we adapt to it and work together across entities and many other neighboring communities, as you said. I think it's important to stress that theme throughout this is that we're ahead of many of our neighbors and many people around the West because of how well we've all worked together across jurisdictional boundaries and organizational boundaries. Jeff Schroll, how about you? Some key successes and challenges, opportunities that you see?
Thank you, Chris. I think there's quite a few things that we're looking at. One, COVID isn't leaving us anytime soon that we can tell. And so we're going to continue to make that a top priority and continue to work with our partners to just get to, right now our focus is on getting to ski season. Earlier in the summer, it was just getting to summer, getting through holidays, those kinds of things. And so we want to make sure that we work hard on keeping our residents safe, our guests safe as they come into the Valley was typically our biggest time of the year. The other thing too that I'm really excited to be doing is the county is right now looking at putting back on the to-do list all the things that we kind of had to not do for the last 7 months, and so there's still a lot of other things that affects this county that we're still going to get back to working on. Transportation. We just took delivery of 3 of our electric buses this week, and you'll see those out on the road this ski season. We're really excited about that. Probably have those up and running in the Mid-Valley on the Highway 6 routes. Housing is still there. We know that. And then just the whole, everything that we typically been working on and the things that we had some momentum going into 2020 that just really got put on the back burner. I think it's our goal to and I think our team is big enough and resilient enough that we can tackle COVID and to Will's point, start to get back to a little bit of normality in terms of what we're looking at. The other thing that's I think becoming a big priority for us, in addition to climate and transportation and housing, is equity and inclusion. We really worked hard on doing a better job with our messaging to our Spanish speakers in the Valley through COVID, and then we had a really important opportunity when the Grizzly Creek fire broke out and a lot of our potential evacuees, we didn't ever have to evacuate the western end of Eagle County, but we want to do a better job with that. And it's been said that Eagle County has led the way in a lot of different things with COVID throughout the state, and we don't want to take our eye off that ball either. We want to keep moving and doing just that, but also getting back to normal functions of Eagle County. To do a great job and a leadership job and beat expectations with the services that we provide up and down the Valley that would be around if COVID weren't here. And so we look forward to a day that COVID's not part of our vocabulary and I don't have to wear masks anymore outside in public, but as long as it's here, we'll be at the table and working with our business partners and our community. So I'm looking forward to 2021. I've told you, Chris, before on several times, I never party on New Year's Eve, but I might this year just to get rid of 2020. So yeah, we're looking forward to the future. Hallelujah.
Thanks, Jeff. We appreciate your views and your thoughts. And Beth Howard, how about you from opportunities, challenges? And I know there's going to be a lot that comes up in the Q&A too, relative to this, but from your perspective at Vail Resorts.
I think first, Chris, just looking back to the summer and what we learned from that, I think, as Jeff just said, back in April, we were just trying to navigate what would summer even look like, and to be able to open right before the 4th when most of our guests were coming our way, and to have to see our employees return to work safely, be able to allow a mountain experience in a way that we've never offered it before. I think for many of you who may have enjoyed the mountain this summer, it was very different. We had limited offerings. Epic Discovery really was just our coaster. Our F&B was grab and go, no scratch or kitchens, prepping that food, but we were able to get the gondolas running out of both portals, biking, hiking, and people getting up and enjoying it. And we had much success with that. So I think looking back, yeah, and being able to learn from that, it's very, very small scale example of what we were putting our kind of toe into on how we were going to operate up the mountain safely. So it really did inform us, and it gives me confidence in how we can scale for the winter. There's so many opportunities ahead, and there's so many unknowns. And I think we have planned deeply all summer in how we're going to execute the winter safely and successfully for our employees and our guests and our communities. So I'm excited for the fact that we have put this work in. It takes a tremendous amount of time to go deep into every aspect of the guest and employee experience. And the patience that you all have had in that has been great, because we're not as far out front of the season with communicating certain things as in the past, just because we've had to go deeper and think about how we're going to execute every aspect of the experience. So I do think the opportunity is we all just continue to do what we've been doing. The partnership is strong, and you're going to hear that theme. You have heard that theme already. And I think that we just have to keep leaning into that, because there's going to be some things that we've tried to anticipate for, or a scenario we didn't quite get exactly right. We're not going to be perfect, but I think our commitment, we can work together, learn, adjust, be nimble, and make sure that every day we're working for improvement in every aspect of what we do. So, and I think none of us can let our guard down, and just being vigilant in everything, because it's tiring. It's the fatigue of mask wearing, as simple as that is, or physically distancing, or the waiting in lines, or things just aren't as they were, and they're not as convenient. And so everyone just really having the mindset that it is going to be different, but we also are going to have a great experience on the mountain, and just all of us working together will allow that to happen.
Yeah, thank you, Beth. And I think it's worth taking a twist on your comments, or an aligned comment of the increased need for empathy and compassion, because there's a lot of stress out there. And
Chris, we may have lost you, or is it on my end?
I'm
Chris, you
maybe
froze for a moment there. And
I
we
froze
didn't.
for a moment. I was just suggesting that empathy and compassion is something that we all need to embrace. And as we have these times, and as we all recognize lines and changes from the smallest retailer to the biggest organization, having compassion and empathy for others is so important right now. And we'll hand it over to Will then to share your thoughts on successes and opportunities. And then we'll have one quick question and jump into the audience Q&A.
Chris, I would say the biggest success has been around the creation of Eagle Valley Behavioral Health and the foundational work that we've done there. Adding 30 plus additional behavioral health providers to this valley and integrating them into primary care in the schools. So much of that was foundational to our response associated with the second order consequences of the virus, and prolonged isolation and concerns about the virus itself and or the economic impact. And that really put us in a position to be able to handle this uptick in behavioral health issues. I would say secondly, I'm most proud of the way that the Vail Health team got out in front of some of this. In January, Chris Lindley, who is an epidemiologist by training, was whispering in my ear, we got to start stockpiling PPE. We need to go ahead and put together, a task force. And from doing testing that was pretty broad and robust, setting up the first drive-through testing center, and multiple sort of stand-up locations, leveraging Eagle County's Mirror Bus to get into the mobile homes where there's especially vulnerable folks, and really just mobilizing to try and handle that initial wave, I think put Eagle County in a pretty favorable position. And One of our biggest challenges this summer associated with that, though, was testing. It's the key to managing a virus. Our ability to test and give that information to Eagle County so that they can trace and isolate or quarantine where appropriate really does help stop the spread. And initially we were using the state lab. They got overwhelmed. We started using national labs where you have to literally mail the swabs in. They got overwhelmed, and people were waiting 7 and 14 days. And Eagle County just can't do tracing appropriately. And small businesses that only have 10 or 20 employees can't have 2 and 3 and 4 people out at one time. So thankfully, after struggling mightily with this, we were able to bring testing in-house and have rapid turnaround capability, which really helps, the schools, it helps the county, it helps the, businesses, and it helps us as providers to be able to jump out in front of that as quickly as we can and get on top of it. And, the collaboration across our provider community, Mountain Family Health Center, Castle Peak, Doctors on Call, there was no, you don't work with us or for us. Everybody rolled up their sleeves and said, let's get together and try and fix this. So I'm most proud of what we've done to prepare to it, and we struggled with it. We will continue to struggle with it, but we look forward to continuing to work together in this next phase. If I'm going to give just a plug, I mentioned before, as we're evolving into wellness and getting upstream, please, if you haven't gotten your flu shot, get it. If you haven't seen a PCP, a primary care provider, please do, and let's do the blood work and see if you might have cardiovascular or pulmonary disease that you weren't aware of, that we can help you to start managing, which again will, help if you do get COVID to sort of fend some of that off. So we really want to try and get upstream to wellness. We really want to try and get you to get flu shots and continue to navigate these subsequent waves of the virus.
Excellent. Thank you, Will. Very briefly, before we jump into the audience questions, and I'm going to look for a very short answer from each of you guys, just a quick initial thought, but how will you define success for 2021? And Phil, we'll start with you and we'll go around. How will you define success in 2021?
Chris, for us, for 2021, we got to finish the school year strong. We got to keep kids in school, but we can't lose sight of the other goals that we have as a district. So that means maintaining our robust and vibrant academic opportunities. We're looking to expand our partnership with Colorado Mountain College. We're also expanding our career opportunities for our high school kids through Career X. It also means we got to maintain our mental health supports. 2021 is going to present a lot of social emotional challenges for our kids. So our partnerships with Eagle Valley Behavioral Health, as Will mentioned, is huge. The Hope Center, Mind Springs, all support our kids. And some of the other initiatives that keep our district strong, like employee housing. We've got new employee housing in Brush Creek in Eagle. We're about to break ground on some property that we own near Battle Mountain and near Eagle Valley Elementary. So we just got to keep the momentum going and the good things that the district is doing. And we can't put all of our focus on pandemic response. We've got to keep this district sustainable, viable, vibrant for the future. So 2021, we got to remain strong with our schools, but also not lose sight of all the other goals that we have in front of us.
Thanks, Phil. And Jeff, brief definition of success for 2021.
I mean, I think the word that comes to mind is resiliency, and that word should cross all lines of the folks that are on this call. We want to see schools stay open. I don't want to see an interruption in the ski industry in our county this whole season. I don't want to see any hospitalizations of COVID in Vail Health or deaths related to that, or mental health reasons. I think that would be success. I like, our current unemployment rates are 7% in Eagle County. Love to see those go back to, which is better than we thought they would be. But I'd like to see those go back to where they were pre-COVID, which has always been pretty low, because I think that shows a sign of us moving in a good direction with our economy.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeff. Beth Howard, what do you think? How will you define success in 2021?
That we open the season and we stay open, and we maintain that. Yeah, simply put, I'd say that. But I'd also say that, in order to do that, we just continue to maintain our high standards that we've set for ourselves regarding safety, and we do see safety as service. It's not a departure from our core values of delivering on safety on the mountain experience. So it does weave well into our culture of safety. So we will, yeah, let's just stay open, keep everyone safe, and everyone can enjoy the winter just in a little bit different way this year.
Yep. No, I think that's excellent, and that's the answer we're all looking for to define success. Is how do we open safely, stay open safely, be it schools or businesses, or certainly the mountain that's our driver. Will Cook, how about you? How will you define success in 2021?
Same sort of thing. How do we manage the virus safely and effectively, while also not losing sight of the fact that the virus doesn't, stop us from still needing to provide other care, be it oncology or what have you? And how do we really stay focused on, enhancing access to more affordable care, so we remove that as a barrier and really getting upstream to illness? I again think that we've got to focus on keeping people well, and if they've got chronic diseases, how do we stay on top of those? So managing the virus, but staying focused on fixing some of the other problems, behavioral health, the cost of healthcare, and really wellness and getting upstream.
Good. Thank you, all of you, for that answer. And Claire Noble, we're going to jump into audience Q&A in our remaining time here. We have about just over 30 minutes left. And Claire's been monitoring the Q&A. So Claire, if you don't mind, the first question for us.
Sure. So as a nation, we're starting to see an uptick in coronavirus cases, a real surge, and this had been predicted. Well, here in our community, from my perspective, I see most people are pretty good about wearing masks, but I just came back from 2 of our neighboring states that don't take mask wearing as seriously. And Mike's question goes directly to that. And it's for Beth, but I think other panelists might have some ideas about this as well. What measures are you prepared to take to enforce guests wearing masks on chairlifts, in gondolas, and other areas on the mountain?
Claire, I can take an initial response at that question. It's a great question. I think, experiencing this summer with guests coming from, drive markets, but as far as 1,000 miles away, each state and county is a little bit different. And I think that's a learning to know that's going to be a dynamic this winter as well. That's who we attract to our community, is people from all over. And being able to inform our guests before they arrive on what's expected and what the experience will be like is a very proactive step we can all work together on. What we exercised this summer was that we were, on the mountain perspective, we were very strict, that no one was going to be able to access the mountain without having the face coverings on or distancing. And looking back, we had very, very few instances where we had disruption or people not adhering to that. So we know we can do it. But I think what we do find that if there are inconsistencies in face coverings or distancings or the health protocols from other parts of the country or other parts of our community, there becomes a tension with our guests. If they don't have to wear their masks somewhere in our community, but as soon as they come to the mountain, we're saying, I'm sorry, you need to do this, or you can't enjoy our mountain. That's where I think the guest experience will not be seamless, and that's what we're trying to do as a community. Our guests don't really differentiate who runs the mountain, who runs the town, or who runs the county. It's just they want a great experience. So the more consistency we can have, really just reinforcing in the right way, the guest service way, to maintain those face coverings, distancing, and if they want to know why, we give them the why. We want you to be able to enjoy this mountain, but the only way we can do it is if everyone is taking the safety protocols seriously.
And Jeff, if you can share some of the things the county's been doing with regards to messaging and some of the tools that you've been working with to provide out to the business community, I think that would be related to Beth's comments.
Yeah, I think this is an important issue that we're going to be on top of. We're trying to be on top of for till COVID goes away. And we started it this last summer that not only is this pandemic a public health crisis, it's a communication crisis too. So that we want to be able to get that message out that we did last summer, the beginning parts of summer, that we want guests to come back. We want our economy to be thriving. But the only way to do that is if we message how important it is that everybody, including our year-round residents, as well as our guests and visitors, maintain the 5 commitments to containment, and the social distancing, mask, washing the hands. And I think we had a pretty good summer, especially judging by some of the the sales tax numbers that we've seen with some of our municipal friends and some of the business industry. And we're just gonna have to keep that going. And so we already have a team that's set up in the county, both internally and externally, that is working on that kind of messaging, that if we want ski season to stay open and not have any interruptions in that, and we want the schools to stay open, all of our guests that are coming into the valley, we need your help. And for the most part, I think we saw that cooperation. A lot of our second home owners and guests, they actually decided to let's summer here. We come here for a little bit of the summer and go back home. I think there's a lot of folks that looked at it and just said, you know what, if this is a pandemic, I'm going to hang out in beautiful Eagle County to get through this. And we may see more of that in the wintertime too. But that messaging, however people get here from either I-70 or the airport or wherever, or however they want to choose to get here, we're going to be pretty aggressive with that kind of messaging, that we need our visitors' help to keep us safe and to keep our numbers low. That's really important.
Thanks, Jeff. Claire, next question.
So this circles back to something that Jeff said earlier in the program about the outreach to the Spanish language community around the fires and potential evacuations. We've had a number of people ask about how are we building stronger bridges among our Latino community and businesses, and how are we building equity in our community? And while I think Jeff would be a great person to answer this question, I think all of the panelists might have some thoughts on this as well.
Thank you, Claire. I think this is probably one of our most exciting opportunities that we've had. As you said in my bio early on, I've been with the county 2.5 years and have had to declare 3 county emergencies. Some folks think it's me, but regardless of who's to blame for that, one of the things that we learned early on in the Lake Christine fire is we didn't have a great mechanism set up to communicate and outreach to our Latino population. And so that was something that we really need to fix. And so we've really worked hard this year of standing up really what we're going to be calling a new team within Eagle County that deals with the equity and inclusion of everything that you can imagine, because we want it to be a way of life, not an afterthought. When a fire breaks out or emergency breaks out or COVID or some other pandemic breaks out, that we just kind of grab. In the past, the thought process is just let's grab the nearest Spanish speaker and see if they can help us translate. Well, COVID definitely showed us, when you start getting into the scientific, and Will knows this, all the language and the nuances that go with COVID. My very limited Spanish isn't going to be able to communicate very well. And so we want to take a look at that issue as an organization and say, how do we get ahead of that? How do we engage our non-English speaking? It doesn't have to all just be Spanish. How do we engage our non-English speaking folks so they can understand everything that we're trying to do and include them and have them be part of not just the response for emergencies, but also for the other things that we mentioned. We want to hear their thoughts on growth in housing and transportation and climate. We know that that's affecting everybody. So I think we're really excited. We're still in a very kind of new frame of mind in addressing this issue. And certainly if there's folks out there, I saw a couple of the comments on the chat. If there's folks out there that would like to learn more or have some ideas, I would definitely encourage you to reach out to the county manager's office. Or we've just got a really good team of people that are really searching for the right way to do this and make sure that we are inclusive of every walk of life in our county. And we really think I can't control the world, but we really can make a difference here in Eagle County. And we're excited to be doing that.
Along those lines, Chris, and I'll be brief so we can get to the other questions. We've been really trying to focus on making sure that we're not just advertising and communicating everything in Spanish in addition to English, but how do we employ folks who are part of that community and have them be, Spanish speaking, and not just Spanish speaking, ingrained in the community. So Jerry Lopez and Brazzo, we in fact just pulled Brazzo under our board, and My Future Pathways is there's just a ton of things that are happening in the community already. But how do we make sure at our governance level, our management level, and our staff level, we're recruiting people who not just can speak Spanish, but understand the culture and the barriers and the differences. I mean, a lot of our Latinx population uses healthcare very differently than do folks who live here in America. And so, so we really have to put forth very deliberate, concentrated efforts here. And Vail Health has a long way to go there, but we're on the right pathway. And we always will encourage anyone who can, come work for our organization or advise us on ways that we can improve, we're open to that. And whether or not it's through Chris Lindley or Jerry Lopez or Brazzo or myself, please let us know how we can continue to improve in that arena.
Yeah, thank you both. And Claire, as you get the next question prepped, it's a matter of being intentional. And I think both the county and the hospital, and certainly the school district, has a good history of this across the board. It's a matter of being intentional. The Vail Daily has done a nice job with some of the things they've updated in the past recent months with dual language. And I think there's just a more intentional effort than I've ever seen. So kudos to all of you on that. Claire, next question.
So this next question, I have to warn you, is not a softball, but I have a feeling that this is on the minds of a lot of the people in our community. It's really for all of the panelists, as you are all employers, but I think I'd like to start with Phil. We're approaching a crisis loss of middle-class jobs. How do we build community that has a sustainable base of good paying jobs that enable families to live and thrive in our community?
Great question. I think I could go back to one of the goals that I referenced earlier, and that's our expansion of affordable housing opportunities. So we've doubled down on that as a district in the last year. Since I've been in this role, we created a housing master plan. So we have a 10-year plan now for how to develop affordable housing units on small parcels that the school district owns up and down the valley. And as I mentioned, we've got 5 units available now in Eagle, looking to develop more in Eagle and in Edwards. But I think another piece that we have an obligation to do is to make sure that we maintain competitive wages. So we just did a competitive wage analysis and recognized that our food service employees were not in a competitive place, and immediately implemented a raise to their hourly wages so that we can maintain them as part of our team. I think another piece that we've done is as we've had school closures, many of our really valuable employees, like our bus drivers and our food service employees, even though we aren't coming to school, we're still trying to keep them on our payroll because we don't want to lose them. It would not be our plan to close down the school district entirely this year. We want to keep as much open as we can. So we got to honor them at all times, making sure their salaries and their benefits are competitive, and that we have affordable housing for them, and that we have employee assistance programs to provide support for them for social and emotional needs.
I'll tackle that one too, because we're very involved in a lot of this work. But I think the key to middle-class jobs is absolutely focusing on how we help retain our people and our businesses so they can grow here. The fundamental community challenges that Phil talked about include housing, healthcare, early childhood. How do we help impact those cost of living drivers in meaningful ways to help people stay here and grow their business here? And it's how do we build that business friendly environment where everyone from executives to middle class to entry level people have pathways through their career where they can grow and thrive in Eagle County. And that's addressing those fundamental community challenges is a big part of that. It's not all of it, but it's a big part.
Agreed. And just a quick statement here, where Vail Health can help the most, if we can bring down the cost of healthcare, that lets businesses repurpose that money towards offering even better wages or, growing, their business. And so that's the piece that we have the most focus on at this point.
All right, Claire, what's our next question?
Did anybody else want to chime in on that, or shall I move on, Chris?
Beth or Jeff, anything to add?
I lost connection, so I missed the main connection. Or yeah, I just missed the question.
It was around middle class jobs. How do we help maintain and grow middle class jobs to have a thriving community?
Well, one of the things that I'll say that the county's identified is through COVID, we've really learned that it's been a discussion in this valley for decades that we've got to look at different ways to be more economic diverse. So that we can weather, whether it's rough snow years due to climate or pandemics that can chase away our visitors and guests every once in a while. We need to look at how do we diversify our economy in a better way that's a little bit more resilient and a little bit more bomb-proof, if you will, for some of the things that happen to us, and or that that we might be facing in the future. And so I think that's going to be a big priority for us is to be encouraging that and looking to our business community and what that means. With COVID, we're also seeing a lot of people are closing down their different places of employment in bigger cities and moving here, and they can do that virtually. And I think we want to try to find a way, how do we embrace that, and how do we identify that, and what kind of job creation is that does that look like for our valley? So those are a lot of the things that we're focusing on.
Chris, are we ready for another question?
I think we are.
So I have to tell you, we are getting a lot of questions around access to the mountain and the reservation system. People are wondering if people who are more tech savvy will have an advantage. We have other people worried that if they have friends and family coming over the holidays, that they won't have access to the mountain if they don't have an Epic Pass. I don't want to spend a huge amount of time on this, and there may be a website, that location where, Beth, you can direct people with more questions, but can you just address some of those concerns?
Yes, great question, and probably the most frequent question I get, so I'm not surprised it came up, and thank you for that. I think, yeah, there's a lot of questions because it's different. Well, we've never, ever needed to make reservations to go ski. And I think your patience in allowing us to work through all the details of a reservation system, that it is consistent in the same system across all of our resorts. So we're trying to keep it simple and consistent and user-friendly. And we will have those details coming out before the November 6th day of when we open reservations. And it feels like it's really close in, and I understand maybe some angst around that and because of the uncertainty, but we will commit to all of sharing all the details leading up to November 6th. And I think between now and that time that we share all of the details on how to get access, the epicpass.com is the best place for all the updated information. And then we created a new information avenue on our vail.com, which is winter experience page. We are populating that with everything as current as we can. So between Vail.com, epicpass.com, and the winter experience page, as of today, those are your most current ways to get the information, and there's a lot more coming. So just ask for your patience, and we are so confident that we can do this right, and we do feel confident that for the majority of our season, people will have access to our mountain, and we understand weekends and holidays are peak periods, and we have that data, but I think for the vast majority of the season, we feel our guests and all of you can get access.
Thank you for that. I'd like to circle back to the school district and the current state of education. We have a number of questions around that. For instance, how is the school system dealing with broadband connection for all students, but also people expressing some skepticism about the quality of an online education. Is there anything you could say to assure those parents that this is still a quality education, Phil?
You bet. That's a question I receive frequently as well. Let me speak to the first part of the question, which was about broadband and Wi-Fi accessibility. For the last several years, we've been planning to get devices in students' hands, and our plan called for devices in grades K through 12. And suddenly this year, we were put in a position where we now need to put devices in hands of kindergarten through fourth graders as well. So we've had to adjust our budgeting and our spending priorities to make sure that we can do that, and we have done so. The other piece that we've added is the availability of Wi-Fi hotspots. So any family who does not have access to consistent quality broadband at home, for free, we will provide them with a portable Wi-Fi hotspot and give them access to internet. So at this point, we don't see that as a major obstacle. To the question about is remote learning a quality educational experience? It can be. Is it our preferred modality? No, it's not, which is why we made it a priority to have our schools open and keep them open. We know that kids learn best when they're in classrooms, with teachers, with their peers, not only academically, but on the social emotional side. There's socialization that needs to happen for kids to grow and to feel emotionally well. So again, keeping schools open is our main priority. But in the event that we do shift to remote learning, we've made a lot of improvements since our first foray into that in March and April and May of last year. We've gotten much more consistent in our online platform, using Schoology to host all of our lesson plans and materials and activities. That consistency has been great for students and for families with multiple kids in multiple schools or grade levels. They see the same icons, they see the same lesson plan concepts, but the content is differentiated. We're also working on ways to still provide collaboration online, putting kids into small groups online, having one-on-one feedback with teachers during office hours. So we're looking for ways to leverage that experience and leverage technology to make sure that we're getting the most out of it. Is it our preferred modality? No, we definitely want to keep schools open and keep kids in school as much as we can.
Thank you for that. So my next question involves the coronavirus and a potential vaccine. So this question's for Will. There's been a great deal of chatter in some quarters about the likelihood of a safe and effective vaccine. This is a messenger RNA virus. Safe and effective vaccines for messenger RNA viruses have never been successfully developed and deployed. Are you confident that one could happen in the near term? And what are your thoughts on herd immunity? And I would just add to that, you were talking earlier in the program about the drive-through testing. Could we anticipate drive-through vaccinations?
Sure. I was actually just typing the answer because I mistakenly hit the answer live button. So I'm glad you called this question out because I'm not a good typer. First of all, I'll preface it by saying I'm not clinically or scientifically trained to speak with any degree of authority on this matter. However, because I work in healthcare and because it seems to be so essential to both a vaccine and herd immunity, our long-term navigation of this coronavirus, I do stay very informed and try to educate myself. I'll tell you that I agree with the question. There has not been a lot of historical success with messenger RNA viruses. I mean, even the common cold is a form of a COVID virus, and it's just not something that's had a whole lot of success. And so I don't actually pin our future hopes on a vaccine that is going to completely eradicate it. Just like the flu vaccine each year is probably only 60% or so effective. I do hope that our scientists, and they're working on this all over the world, and many of them are in phase 3 sort of trials, clinical trials for these things, can find something that has some effect. But for us to think that there's going to be a vaccine that we can all get and then all of a sudden this thing is completely eradicated is not realistic. And even if they finish their phase 3 trials and start to get this thing prepared to distribute, because you're starting to see articles about how do you ration it, I don't think we should assume that everyone who gets a vaccine is completely protected. And I don't mean to diminish hope there. I just am trying to strike a balance between, hope and reality. And then secondly, for herd immunity, historical experience have shown that herd immunity can help as people get exposed and their bodies develop immunity to things. But we're already seeing some of the scientists talk about people who tested positive for coronavirus in March or April and then got symptoms again in late summer, early fall, and are testing positive again, which would tell you that maybe herd immunity, like a vaccine, is not a foolproof measure. But I will tell you that we have to rely on the scientific community and our clinicians, and we have to hope that both a vaccine and herd immunity, although not foolproof, will help contribute towards getting through this. And we've gone through several different coronaviruses before, H1N1, and even going back to the one in 1918. And humans evolve and our bodies evolve and figure these things out. But I do not think that you should anticipate a vaccine, be it through a drive-through location or in your doctor's office, will happen anytime during this fall and winter season. I think we instead have to follow the 5 commitments and continue to do everything that we can when we're sick to not expose other people, and work with one another to try and figure out how we manage this virus the ways that we've been managing it thus far. And again, I don't mean to dispel any hope, but that's my answer to those questions.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Circling back to Jeff, and a lot of people very happy with your acquisition of electric buses. However, some of the people riding those buses are concerned because They're finding that they're very crowded, so there's no real social distancing on the buses. Were you aware of that, and how is the county addressing that?
We are aware of that, and I think, and that's a great question. I sort of knew that one was going to come up today because I think that's something that the state is actually still working on, coming up and developing better guidelines on. Our system, not just us, but Beaver Creek Resorts, Vail, Avon, their business model, everybody's business model is moving people and moving them efficiently and quickly. And so our public health team is working with the state public health team and really kind of trying to develop some clear guidelines prior to ski season. And it's not just Eagle County. Every transit agency, particularly in the mountain regions, are working on this issue. And so there's no definitive answers of what that's going to look like just yet. But some of the reasons that we're still looking at least trying to get buses to seating capacity. One, you've got similar situations in airplanes. Some of the protocols for bus transportation includes keeping it ventilated, leaving windows open. And the downside is if we don't figure out a way to move people in the traditional mass transit way, what we might start to see is people in carpools and closer, tighter quarters moving through the valley and we're finding out that if you're carpooling with somebody in a car, your mask's probably not on, there's nobody there to have you do it. And so we tend to see a little bit more disease spread in those scenarios than we do with fairly short contacts if people are masked up and doing the things they're supposed to be doing on a bus. There's not a lot of data that shows that disease spread comes from that direction. It specifically relates to the ski season. I mean, that's another component that we're looking at very hard and talking with the state, because if you get off at the Bear Lot, I'm gloves, helmet, you can't see any skin on me showing, and I'm just on that bus for a short ride up to the landing or all the way to Beaver Creek, and same thing between Lions Head and the village. Those are pretty short runs that people are pretty well covered up, maybe a lot better than they have been this past summer. So we're going to continue to work on those guidelines with the state. We'll communicate those to our transit agencies, partners throughout our county. I think that's kind of the one last piece that I think even Vail Resorts is sort of working with us and waiting on to hear how the state's going to kind of issue some better guidelines on mass transportation. But because we do think it's we don't want to lose sight of why we're doing mass transit, encouraging that with just some of its climate considerations, but at the same time, we want to make sure we're not spreading disease and that we're doing it in a safe and effective way.
Great, thank you for that. I have gotten a number of questions around mountain operations, so I'm going to bundle these for you, Beth. People want to know about uphill access. They want to know what the food and beverage operation is going to look like. And people want to know if there's going to be any kind of adaptive program on the mountain.
Great questions, and we're working on all of those. So I'll start with uphill access. So we are still going to allow uphill access, but outside of our core operating hours. And we will be getting those details out shortly, and we will always have our hotline going every day as in the past, so you understand where all of our grooming operations or things on the mountain that you would want to avoid for uphill access. So that we have details coming out for that, but there will be access, but it's going to be outside of our daytime operating hours. As far as F&B, it will be very different this year. We are capacity constrained based on our physical distancing requirements, and we are currently laying out our floor plans with our tables and seating and a lot of tech measures to make sure we're hitting this. And we will control how many people can come into any of our restaurants at any given time. And the serveries in our quick serve restaurants will be very different. Typically our style is scramble style, where everyone goes in and goes to whatever food station they want. And it's a bit chaotic and everyone's pretty squished together. So we're going to prevent that from happening by turning our scramble serveries into linear style service, where the guests will enter on one side. We'll have a very core menus this year of grab and go, no customization, no nothing that would allow them to gather or stall in the line. They grab their item. We'll have hot soups. We'll have burgers. We'll have our core popular items, and then they'll exit and pay and go into our seating area. So that will be very different. All of our quick serve and full serve restaurants for lunch will be open this year, and we're doing everything we can to allow a guest to have an opportunity to get something to eat and drink and rest and go to the restroom, et cetera, and have shelter. But it will be very different, and it will be not to the capacity as in the past. And then the final question, Claire, what was that?
That was a question about what kind of adaptive program or adaptive access will you allow on the mountain this year?
Yeah, we're still planning to have our adaptive programs through our ski school and access as in the past. So no change in that area.
Okay, thank you. So we're coming to very close to the end of our time. And so this last question will be for each of our panelists. I would still like to start with Beth, because Beth, a lot of people have been asking what kind of lessons you learned from your Australian resorts this past summer. And the other part of that is a question around what have any of you done or any of your organizations done as a result of COVID that you think you will continue doing in the future that you had not been doing before? But we'll start with Beth.
That's a great question. And thank goodness we've been able to learn from our Australian resorts. Anytime we can learn from another best practice or another one of our resorts is of huge value. I'd say a big learning is what it's like to open a resort for 4 days and close it down. 2 of our 3 Australian resorts had that situation. And that is what we're trying to avoid by doing all of these new policies and procedures and safety protocols. So learning how difficult that is, because all of us know who are in operations or run a business, know what it takes to get to opening day. And then to have to close just a few days later, which was the case there, it's tough. It's a tough go. So that's a huge learning. So we do point to that. Our Australian resorts, Perisher actually was the one of our 3 resorts in Australia that was able to have a season. And just learning about how the lift mazes and queuing work with physical distancing, face coverings, how they're handling capacity in all those areas. We gleaned all kinds of learnings on what worked and what didn't work and how they adjusted. So we have taken all those learnings, put them into our operational SOPs, and we're very grateful to be able to have looked at our Australian resorts to take those learnings forward.
And why don't we go with Will? What things are you doing now as a result of COVID that you think you'll keep doing in the future? You're muted right now, Will.
Yeah, sorry about that. A variety of things. Number one is how do we continue to focus on not just the provision of healthcare, but how healthcare overlaps with a lot of the social determinants of care? And how do we continue to work, collaboratively with the community? Prior to COVID, the community came together to talk about behavioral health crisis, and Eagle Valley Behavioral Health was born. But a similar sort of thing is happening now with population health, which is really, talking about the physical health, the behavioral health, and the affordability aspect that's missing. And how do we really think about the vulnerable in this community beyond just those who may be living in a mobile home and are forced to deal with reporting that they have symptoms and not getting a paycheck or not having access to healthcare to even go and get tested? How do we think about everybody and everything we do, up valley, mid valley, down valley, the Latinx population, the second homers, the people who live and work here every day? And, I think that I don't have an exact answer yet, but I'll tell you, if we don't think about things more holistically, I don't think we have a chance to really allow people to live and thrive in the valley. So for us, it was almost an affirmation of some of the things we were already starting to do, but really underscored the need to accelerate it. So that's probably the biggest thing for us.
Jeff?
Yeah, thank you, Claire. I think one of the things I hope, there's several things that I think we've learned through 2020 that I hope to continue to carry on, and long after COVID's gone. And a lot of them is just the the weekly conversations and the biweekly conversations I'm having with all of our municipal managers and so many of our other partners, even in the private world. We have a weekly call with our business communities, and we're able to tackle a lot more things than COVID now. And like I said, I've been here a long time, and we've just never had that kind of communication across jurisdictions before. And I think that's been very helpful for us to look at bigger picture items. And I think it can't be just the county, or it can't be just a town or a special district or a business that has to solve housing and transportation issues in our valley. It's going to take all of us, just like we've all kind of come to the table here with COVID. And I think it's the lens that we begin to look through things with. To Will's point, I think the lens that we need to look through to make sure our vulnerable population is included and taken care of more on a long-term basis. I've seen so many great generosity things, whether it's food banks or rent assistance and just living expenses come to light when the early part of COVID, when there were a lot of jobs shutting down. That doesn't have to stop at COVID. In some ways we're a wealthy valley, and in some ways it's very difficult to live in this valley if you're not wealthy. And I think it's been a really neat process to see how our county has stepped up to the plate and provided assistance and needs to those who need it, whether it be medical care or whatever else COVID has thrown at us. And how do we keep that going? How do we look out for one another? How do we protect one another and move forward? And I hope we never lose that, even after COVID's long gone.
Phil?
Clare, Eagle County School District is a teaching and learning organization, and we've been very mindful through this whole process about what we can learn. We end every one of our meetings with a silver lining. So what have we learned this week from this situation? So I think our biggest challenge right now is trying to transition our students from dependent learners reliant on teachers and classroom structure and consistent schedules to independent learners who have to take a little more ownership of their own learning. And it's a slow process, but we're getting and showing progress towards that goal. And I think that's one of the key pieces that we're going to try to keep the momentum moving on after COVID. I think it's an important skill for our students. It's going to set them up for greater success post high school. I think the other obvious ones are leveraging technology. We've become a lot more efficient. We've reduced costs by moving a lot of our meetings online, given more time back to our administrators and our school leaders, cut down on our mileage costs and environmental impacts of that. So that will continue as well. And I think to echo some of the comments that Jeff made, the relationships that we fostered in this with our business community, our governmental community, our health community, all of those have been strengthened through this process. And I hope to maintain the collaboration that we've created in the last few months into the future. Great,
thank you. Chris Romer, I have a feeling you have some thoughts too on what we might continue doing moving forward.
Yeah, I would ditto everyone else's comments, but what I would say specifically, the big lesson for me is the yes and approach. We need to have more continued empathy and compassion for others' viewpoints. And it needs to be a yes and. All of these things that have been talked about, from mountain operations to transportation to education to healthcare, vaccines and everything else, comes back to the idea of yes and. Yes, we need to do this, and we need to think of each other, and we need to engage the entire community, and we need to. So I would encourage everyone listening, and I know this group probably believes all of this as well, but the idea of yes and is really the foundational principle that we can apply moving forward. And I think that's been a real lesson from COVID and can be applied to every organization of any size.
Thank you all. We're just a little bit over time, but I want to thank all of you for your generous use of time this morning and sharing your expertise with the community this morning. Thank you all. And thank you, Chris, and the folks at the VVP for putting this together with us. And thanks everybody watching from home or from work. Thank you for joining us this morning. And I hope we'll see you on November 11th for our next program, last program of what we consider our summer season. Thanks and have a great day, everyone.